All right, now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. So ThermoFit has a huge education focus because my goal in my 6-week programs is to educate you on why I have you eating this way so that when you're finished, you're empowered and you're full of knowledge on how to continue on with that lifestyle. So it's not just a 6-week strict diet and then you're off on your own. It's a 6-week crash course on how to live like this and keep those results forever. So in ThermoFit, we focus on a balance of macronutrients, and macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They are all important in our body for different reasons and different functions. They all have their little role to play. But it's when we don't balance them correctly, like when we're getting too much of one and not enough of the other, that it starts to get a bit tricky. And especially if we have a goal of weight loss, we need to balance those things correctly to be able to achieve that. In my programs, each week has a different focus, so I step you through something different every week. For example, week 1 is just about getting you prepared, it's preparation. Week 2 is sorted on getting your mindset right. Week 3 is nutrition, so we dive deep into nutrition. Week 4 is exercise and how to get the most out of your exercise for your goals. Week 5 is all about kind of chilling out and de-stressing and taking a little bit of self-care and how that can benefit your health as well. And number 6, week 6, is all about sustainability. So that is how to put all those things into place and a few extra tips on how to keep it long term. I want the best for you, not just in the 6 weeks, but in the longer term. So let's start and get into what these macronutrients are and what they do. Carbohydrate to start with. Carbohydrate first. It is responsible for our energy. It's basically our body's #1 preferred energy source. It's the one that our body will take energy from initially, its preferred source. It will grab that energy from our carbohydrate that we have in our body. It's also responsible for our insulin levels, our blood sugar levels. So balancing this can be very crucial, and I'll get into that in just a sec. We can all hold a certain amount of carbohydrates in our body. So we have, say, a carbohydrate tank, which is split all over our body in our muscles and our liver and everything, but we only can have a certain amount. Once we hit that amount and we fill up the tank everywhere in our body, it actually overflows and stores in our body as fat. So you can see why we need to balance that macronutrient, especially to be able to get a decent weight loss of what we're looking for. Because if we're constantly eating a lot of carbohydrate and it's overflowing and storing as fat, that's going to become a problem for us. It's conflicting with what your goals are. When we digest carbohydrate, our body's response is to release insulin to balance those blood sugar levels. So let's say we eat an apple or some lollies, same. So even though it's natural sugar and shit sugar, they're gonna act the same in the body. Although the apple has more fiber, which slows that release down of the sugar spike. But what happens is insulin is released from the pancreas. It's in our bloodstream. While that insulin is present in the bloodstream, it's a kind of triple bad situation because 1, our body cannot burn fat while insulin is present. So we will not be in a fat burning zone if we have that carbohydrate in the body. 2, it promotes the storage of fat because it kind of puts everything onto hold while that insulin is there and before it's getting the blood sugar levels back down again. And 3, it makes you hungry again really soon because that blood sugar level's dropped and we get the signal to eat again. So if we were to go and eat carbs again, we have this never-ending cycle of insulin in the blood and we're never going to be able to burn our fat stores. So that's a little rundown of carbohydrate and how it works in the body. Now, fat. Fat is our second source of energy. And with fat, we have like an unlimited supply of fat. If we were to keep adding fat to our stores, we will just keep building on it. Unlike our carbohydrate tank where we have a certain amount, our fat levels can just keep getting higher and higher if we don't learn how to manage our eating to support that. So fat is our second source of energy. We can only tap into using that energy when we have low amounts of carbohydrate in the tank. Because what happens is our body says, okay, I've got low amounts of carbohydrate right now, so I'm actually going to bring some of this fat out that's stored in my body and use that for energy. And fat, that's good, right? That's what we want because fat is a really efficient source of energy. It's just being able to tap into it correctly. Another few really good things about fat is that fat doesn't spike our insulin like carb does, or at all, or maybe even just the tiniest little bit. So we're not going to get that blood sugar spike and up and down, and we definitely don't get that insulin in our blood. So it manages our energy levels a lot longer and slower rather than this up and down that the carbs do. Another thing is that it also keeps us feeling fuller for longer, whereas carbohydrate has just got that quick, it's absorbed very quickly in the body, but fat takes longer to break down and it leaves us feeling satisfied and more full. So that is exactly what we want, especially when we're trying to achieve weight loss and a healthier lifestyle. Fat is also responsible for absorbing some micronutrients. So micronutrients are our vitamins, our minerals, and our antioxidants. And if we don't have certain amounts of fat in our body, we will not be able to absorb our fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins A, D, E, and K. So that's responsible for things like having healthy hair, skin, nails, eyes, things like that. So if we don't have enough fat, if we're restricting that and we're on a low-fat diet, we are not going to be absorbing those key nutrients. So we really want to have fat in our diet. Those days of fat phobia are gone. Thank God for that, because it was not doing anybody any favors. Taking away the fat and replacing it with sugar, which is carbs, this is what I believe is responsible for a lot of different health conditions that society has today across the world. And last but not least, protein. So protein from animal sources, plant-based sources, wherever. Protein is a great macronutrient for a few reasons. One is that it is really hard for the body to break down. So it lasts a long time, which is really good for weight loss. Similar to fat, but probably even more so. Our body takes longer to break it down, so it leaves us feeling full and satisfied for so much longer. Which is why a lot of those kind of weight loss ways of eating are higher in protein, because they achieve that. It also doesn't store as fat. So if we were to eat a lot of protein, what it does is that our body takes it, it breaks it down into amino acids, and then it uses what it needs to use it for. It goes to where it needs to repair that tissue and the muscle, and then we excrete the rest through our urine. So we just take what we need and we get rid of the rest. There are some issues that I go into more in my program with, having too much protein and what that can do on the body. But as a general quick overview of macronutrients here today, I just wanted to give you a little rundown on those key 3 macronutrients and how they can work for weight loss. And let's talk about the C word, calories. So calories, we don't focus on calories in ThermoFit. I don't recommend that people focus on calories at all. based on what I've just told you, calories is the total amount of energy, say, on the plate or in that food. It doesn't look at the breakdown. So like I mentioned, you need to balance these things. It will give you the total amount of energy in that food and not where the carbs or the protein or the fat is coming from. So we could be completely neglecting one or more of those areas and overeating in other areas, and it just isn't good for health or sustainability. To make more sense of that, calories is based on a number, right? You know that, calories and kilojoules. So each gram of carbohydrate holds 4 calories. Each gram of fat is 9 calories. And each gram of protein is it 4? Yeah, 4 calories. So that would suggest that if someone was eating a high fat diet, in fact, that they could think that this is not healthy for them because the calorie amount of fat per gram is so high. Whereas now you know, based on what I've just mentioned, that we need fat for a lot of different reasons, and it's more so about the carbohydrate, which is only 4 calories per gram, that inhibits our body's response to lose weight. Now I want to give you a little analogy of a car. So pick a car, any car, your favorite car, because your body is this car. And in your body, you have 2 fuel tanks. So your car has 2 fuel tanks. The first one is petrol. That's our carbs. The second one, we'll say it's LPG, and that is our fat tank. Now, if you go to the petrol station and you're filling up with petrol, if you put too much in, it's going to overflow into that LPG tank, that fat tank like we talked about before. But in this case, that fat tank can just keep getting bigger and expanding, and that means the car, your body, is going to be heavier, it's going to be slower, there's going to be much more stress on the engine, so you can imagine how that goes. The only way that we can get into using our LPG, which is what we want because it's a cleaner, more efficient source of energy, is if we keep that petrol tank low at a certain level, and then we can go into the LPG and we can burn into our fat stores, which makes the car lighter, makes it faster, makes it perform better, it's more focused, and it's all round better for the engine, less stress. Now, each car does have their unique tank capacity. So, you know, my car might be X amount of litres in the tank that I need, and another car will be X amount of litres in that tank. And I understand that not everybody's the same, but in my programs and from my 10 years experience in weight loss and working closely one-on-one with people, I've come up with a general balance of this carbs, proteins, and fats that works for most people to achieve this. And that, as a really quick and general overview, is about 50% of your diet coming from healthy fat sources, 20% coming from carbs, and 30% coming from protein. So that is what you'll find in the ThermoFit program, and that's what works generally for most people. Again, this is all a very quick rundown of what I go into more in my programs, and you have 12 months to access these programs and all this information so that you can take your time to digest it. Pun not intended. And you can get the most out of it. You can keep coming back to it as often as you like in that 12 months, and you have access to the 4 group start dates every year. So you can really take your time. There's a lot to learn, but I make sure you have ample amounts of time to go through it at your own pace, and I will support you long term with this.